Calling to order school committee business meeting for Monday, December 5th at 6:32. Attendance, please, Mrs. Kennedy?
Mayor Ridden is absent. Ms. Hall?
Here.
Mr. Callahan?
Here.
Ms. Walker?
Present.
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Mr. Bennett?
Here.
Ms. Higgins?
Here.
One absent.
Thank you. Everyone, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any public comment this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to student and staff recognitions.
All right. That was quick. I'll go up to the podium to make it official.
Great. Got everything you need?
I hope so.
All right.
All right. Well, as we've established with our school committee, beginning of every school committee, we have the opportunity to recognize some great students and also great staff members. And tonight we have some wonderful students we want to recognize. Our first student that we'd like to recognize is Jennifer Mosconi. And she's being recognized, if you all recall, at the last school committee meeting, Bring Change to Mind Club. So Jennifer is being recognized for her efforts to bring attention to destigmatizing mental health in schools and within the community. Jennifer is one of the co-presidents of the high school Bring Change to Mind Club at the high school. The club offers students a chance to feel comfortable talking about themselves and mental health issues inside and outside of school. Coach Sheridan commented that Jenny is well-suited for this role. She is kind, a genuine friend, and displays the highest level of character integrity. Her efforts to support her peers and teachers are appreciated by the entire NHS community, and I would also say the entire district and city of Newburyport. So congratulations. Dad, you want to take a picture? All right, congratulations. Yeah, be great. All right, our next student is Logan McKnight for grade 8. He's been nominated by the Knox staff to be the 2022 Ambassador of Project 351 for Newburyport. Project 351 is a statewide leadership and service program where a student ambassador from each of the 351 cities and towns of Massachusetts work in a collaborative way to develop leadership skills, create positive change across the state within their school district. Logan was selected because of his characteristics that align with the Knox advantage of respect, responsibility, kindness, and awareness. Logan is well respected by his peers, his teachers, administrators, and we are excited to support Logan in leading a service learning project that will connect the greater Newburyport community with the Project 351 program's mission. So congratulations, Logan McKnight. That goes right on the fridge.
So you want a picture of the superintendent on your fridge?
Okay, and we have one more recognition. And I just wanted to almost go all the way back, just talking about our student recognitions. In our elementary principals and high school principals, we'll be talking about social emotional learning. But what I really believe part of that is to create leadership opportunities for these great students in Newburyport. And if you recall, a few months ago, or a couple months ago, Declan Quinby, first grader, was recognized for his leadership all the way at the Bresnahan. So we're just so proud of these students and what they do to really make positive change within their school community. So we expect big things from them in the future. So with that being said, no pressure. We also, within schools, you need to have great role models for the students to look up to. This next staff member we're recognizing has been a great role model in the city of Newburyport and the Newburyport Public Schools for a very, very long time. She's one of the most humble teachers, professionals that I've worked with, but we really want to recognize her tonight and shine some light on the great work that she's doing. Jill Moran is a biology, anatomy, physiology teacher at NHS and an advisor for the Interact Club. She was recently recognized as a Robert C. Wood Memorial Hero Award to those that exemplify the Rotary's vision of helping others, putting service above self, and trying to do good for the world, and having a true positive impact on the community. This is a tremendous accomplishment. As proclaimed by the Rotary Foundation dinner, Ms. Moran has fostered an environment at our school where volunteering is fun and cool. The Interact Club has grown from just a handful of students when she took it over 4 years ago to over 150 students today. Jill has helped the Interact Club running with virtual and in-person monthly meetings, subcommittee meetings, recruiting, and dozens of volunteer events within the community. She's also kicked off microfinance program through the Interact Club, providing loans for individuals in third world countries. We are very fortunate to have her as part of our faculty, and it's great to see our Interact Club thrive and serve as a model for other Rotaries throughout the North Shore because of Jill's leadership. So congratulations, Jill Moran.
We'll now take a few minutes recess. School committee members, if you want to come up and congratulate our recipients. that
I'll
up
just
there?
go up here because I want to mention
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so we're going to jump back in with a new staff introduction. Also?
Yes, and we have we have one staff introduction, but I also want to recognize Michael Lawler, who's standing off to my left. So he was an NHS grad who now works for Project 351. And as the world turns here, was also an ambassador in 2012 in 8th grade. So he got this award back in 2012. Back then, he was my height, so. I haven't grown since 8th grade, but it's okay. All right, we just wanted to thank you for all your work for Project 351, and we love our grads coming back and supporting the students.
Thank you guys, and we'll be sure to get more information out of school committees. We love when school committees support us, and we love to support you guys in any way. So,
Awesome.
if you have any questions, just reach out.
All right, thank you so much. All right, our next introduction, if you want to come on up, I can embarrass you a little bit. Katie, yes, this is Katie Vaziolis. Did all right, right? That's not bad. So she'll be filling in as our Director of Supervisor for Nursing, taking over for Miss Lauren McDonald. And I just want to kind of give you a background. We were very, very fortunate within the nursing field, especially throughout the Commonwealth with school nurses. Katie comes very highly recommended with a lot of experience. She has her bachelor's from the University of Vermont. She has experience as school nurse, a healthcare administrator who's worked both in the hospital, educational settings. Most recently, Katie was the director of health and nursing for the Haverhill Public Schools. In that position, she was responsible for managing a comprehensive health service program of over 8,000 students, 18 school sites, 40 health service employees. As a district leader, Katie's worked closely with building administrators to support students, create opportunities for district growth, and help develop health programs and policies. In addition, she has an extensive nursing experience. Katie's worked collaboratively with the Department of Health and School Health Unit. Her experience and background will allow us in Newburyport to continue to provide complex care for our students moving forward, and also building success of our wellness program under leadership of Miss Riccio and Miss McDonald. And just have to say that the Bruins did beat the Avalanche this weekend. Miss McDonald's out in Colorado right now. So here you go, Katie.
Thank you, Superintendent Gallagher. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. I have worked with Kathy Riccio and Lauren McDonald for many years. Matter of fact, I was Lauren McDonald's kids nurse, so that gives you an idea how long we've known each other. I raised my kids in North Andover, started my school nursing career there. I was at Phillips Academy in Andover and ran health services there for about 7 years, and really decided that my skill set was much better matched with the public sector, and that is when I went to Haverhill in 2014. I've had a wonderful run there. Urban is a very different animal. It's got its challenges. It's very rewarding. I was so fortunate to work under Margaret Murata, our current superintendent. She's amazing. And I'm going to truly miss her and the leadership team I worked with there, as well as my 40 staff members. So last week was a little sad, but I'm really excited to be here. And as Superintendent Gallagher mentioned, my goal here is really to dig in deeply into the programming that we do, really, and be able to come back and talk about results of the programming that we do. And it's cute because Kathy Riccio has already reached out and said, can you make sure this keeps going and that keeps going? So that's really certainly one of my goals. I would say that, obviously readiness to learn is really important to all of us. I have a long history in training school nurses and vision screening, rolling back to 2005. So again, very involved at the state level. So I will, as I get to know everybody, today is day one. I'll be working a lot with the nurses and also with special ed and the principals and supervisors, coaches, really about what it is these kids need to be in the classroom and ready to learn, and how can we best support that. So I'm very excited to be here, and I hope I'll be back in a few months to give you some updates on Health Services is doing. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so for our consent agenda, do we have some warrants, Mr. Callahan?
Yes, we have 3 warrants. I move that the following name bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $382,021.82 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, it's time for our student representative report.
Okay, just a heads up, this is a longer one.
All right, well, we missed you last time.
Yeah. All right, so starting with the Bresnahan. The Scholastic Fair is returning to the Bresnahan in early December, from December 5th to December 10th. This exciting event is a major fundraiser for our school library. Students in grades 1st through 3rd will be able to visit the book fair during the school day on their regular library day. And pre-K and K students will be able to shop with their parents during their scheduled family shopping hours. Parent volunteers will be helping throughout the week. So for school safety drills in Phase 1, and working with the youngest population of students in Newburyport, we are thoughtfully rolling out a series of safety drills. Phase 1 is a preliminary introduction to exiting the building in a safe way, just as we do with fire drills. Students will preview the exit drill and practice on their own with their class. At this time, it is not a simultaneous school-wide drill. The aim is to be developmentally appropriate and will utilize the PBIS skills that we practice every day. And then for the holiday arts, the music teacher, Mr. RM, will be taking 3rd graders to the Senior Center to sing with the senior ukulele group led by Mr. Brian Testa. We are excited for this intergenerational event. And Bresnahan artists led by Mrs. Pam Jameson decorated life rings that are hung on the Custom House's maritime tree. If you have time, check out the 30-foot tree downtown and see if you can spot the Bresnahan artists' work. And now onto the Mullen. The Northeast Passage is bringing wheelchairs and accessories to our school to facilitate and play a variety of familiar and novel games and sports. This experience will teach our students to consider that using a wheelchair while playing a sport requires skill and practice and is also challenging, athletic, and fun. The Similarity Awareness Group will take place in the NOC gym. The Similarity Awareness Program will begin with various activities to promote discussion and encourage students to be thinking about our similarities. Following a brief introduction including activities and discussion, the students will play a game in the wheelchairs and have a more realistic experience. And then on to the NOC. The second round of student-led conversations will take place this week at the NOC Middle School. We have over 85% participation from students and families, which is a 35% increase in attendance from previous parent conferences. The 6th graders attended Project Adventure 2 weeks ago as a part of the NOC PBE activity initiatives. We are beginning to plan for spring PBE trips in the 7th grade. And then plenty of after-school activities around mental health and wellness and fitness are being offered at the NOC Middle School. Yoga and mindfulness and dance are being offered by Ms. Dwyer, and weight training is being offered by Mr. Murphy and Mr. Burgos. Okay, and then on to the high school. We want to commend the Newburyport High School Band for their role in recent community events and parade. They will be showing off their talent along with the high school orchestras next Monday at the annual winter concert. The concert begins at 7 p.m. in the high school auditorium. Next, great job to our students who were a part of the theater program. This past weekend, they had a successful production of the show Tartuffe that took place this past weekend. Their hard work, dedication, and showmanship produced an outstanding performance. In partnership with the Alliance of Climate and Environmental Stewards, the high school will host an environmental open house on December 14th during the Clipper Block period. Like last year, students will be able to network with organizations and companies involved in the environmental field. They will be able to learn about different programs for future internship and/or volunteer opportunities. To inform students about the open house, our student-run Action News is preparing a new segment highlighting the projects students participated in from last year's open house. The high school currently has 2 holiday drives taking place. First, thank you to Joaquin Justiniano for organizing the food drive to support Newburyport Salvation Army Pantry. The high school has a bin available in the front entryway for collection of items. Next, creative writing class is running Poems for Pettingale House. This fundraiser offers participants an opportunity to send an original poem to a person of their choice while donating to a local organization. The poetry will be written by students who are part of the creative writing at night class, and all proceeds will benefit the Pettingale House. After our hiatus due to COVID, the GAPP exchange between Newburyport and our partner school in Waldkirk in the Black Forest is gearing up again. The German students and their teachers are already planning their visit in September 2023 and are excited as we are. The exchange has existed between the two schools for 25 years now. And then the newly renovated German Cultural Center in Boston will soon have a visit by the NHS German language learners. A field trip is planned for later this month.
I have the recognitions. So the Newburyport High School Model United Nations team returned for their international competition at McGill University in Montreal. The team had an outstanding performance, and a special congratulation goes to Theo Roberts, who was recognized by the Model UN Committee as an outstanding delegate. Thank you to Mr. LaChapelle and Ms. Cross for their work coaching the students for this very involved event. Also, thank you to Ms. Taggart for helping to chaperone. Newburyport High School musicians Cedar Schumacher, trumpet, and Evan Legault, tenor voice, will participate in the Northeastern Senior District Music Festival to be held on Saturday, January 7th at the New England Conservatory of Music. This is a concert for the best student musicians from the northeastern corner of Massachusetts, together in a jazz band, where Cedar will play second trumpet, concert corps, and where Evan will sing tenor in a full symphony orchestra and a concert band. Cedar will also audition for the All-State Jazz Band at the end of January. This will be Cedar's second consecutive Senior District Festival appearance. On behalf of their parents, Ms. Zaleski and Mr. Cohen, as well as the entirety of NHS staff, are very proud of these students. We would like to recognize Gabby Lochran, who received the Monaghan Lumber North Shore Student Athlete of the Month. Also, for all 4 coaches that have been named Coach of the Year, Sean Blue for boys soccer, Kevin Sheridan for girls soccer, Lori Salazzo for volleyball, and Don Henniger for girls and boys cross country. A huge shout out to the boys soccer team for making history by winning the Division III state championship. Congratulations to the whole team and Coach Blue for coaching his staff. Also, congratulations to all our athletes on a successful fall season. This semester, Newburyport High School has hosted 10 international students who have been a welcome addition to our Clipper family. With Newburyport becoming popular in the international community, we have more students electing to experience school here. As in the fall, we are looking for families to host additional students for the spring semester. Hosting an international student can be an enriching culture experience for the whole family.
Anything else?
Well done. Read. Impressive. Next up we're going to be hearing about a new chess club. Who's doing that?
I think it's Mr. Wolf, correct?
The chess club?
And he's got the field trip.
So thanks for having me again. So we are looking to start a chess club at Newburyport High School. So we had some students who were interested and they put in a proposal and they have been able to secure an advisor who is Mr. Ken Cole, who is an avid chess fan, and I cannot beat him, so.
I'm not surprised.
He's very good. And so with some potential donations that are available, we were looking to set up the club with a student activities account.
So our role here is simply to approve
Student activities account
the
for a chess
accounts.
club. Correct.
All right, well, I'll make a motion to approve a student activity account for the new chess club.
Second?
Discussion.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if this is for Mr. Littlehale instead of Principal Wolf, but I just want to confirm that the student activity account complies with all the requirements of our policies related to student activity accounts.
Can
Are
someone?
you saying will it?
Yeah.
I
Yes.
just want to confirm that, yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Cole?
Is there a way that you can donate to the chess club? Or how would you do that?
It's just a matter of reaching out to Ken Cole.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, thank you.
Once the account is set up.
Sure. Yep.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Easy one. Are you giving us the overview of the Iceland
Yeah, I
trip
might as
now?
well stay up. I stay
keep
right there.
going.
Okay. So we do have another field trip that we're seeking permission for. This one is to Iceland during the February school vacation of 2024. The trip coordinators are Erin Hobbs and Catherine Taggart, and then they will also be seeking 2 additional chaperones as well. The cost of the trip for the students is $4,639. And the trip is 8 nights, and that includes the overnight flights. And then they'll be in Reykjavik, and they will spend 3 nights in Reykjavik and 3 nights in Korea. And as with their trip to the Galapagos, it has a theme in terms of science education. They will be going on a whale watch and learning about the history of whaling and the fishing industry. They'll be meeting with an Icelandic oceanographer. They'll be having a tour of a geothermal plant, and then many different hikes for natural history and understanding the glaciers and the volcanoes that are part of the island.
Cool. We have any questions about the trip?
I just want to say it's awesome. I've been there.
Okay.
Took my family. It's so great. And they are big fans of hot dogs in Iceland, which would probably surprise a lot of people, but I was very pleased. Very happy about that.
Fun fact.
Bonus. Really.
You went too, Ms. Walker, last summer, right?
I think we talked about the hot dog locations.
Do you have
Yes.
a more
More
substantive
pertinent
comment?
Hey, it's a cultural thing.
No, I agree. It's a great opportunity. Just confirming, maybe you mentioned this, do you know what the estimated cost is going to be for the trip?
That is going to be $4,639.
Okay. And consistent with prior EF trips, it'll be done through the International Club, and so there will be some funding opportunities.
Yeah, we have funding available for students who would be in need.
Thank you.
All right, well, I'll make a motion to approve the 2024 trip to Iceland.
Second.
You know.
No, I had the last one, you can have this one.
Second.
Okay.
I mean, you've been there.
Yes.
Any discussion?
No, I just think it's a wonderful trip. I would really, this is very hot.
Push it back a little, yeah.
I might move it to that table. I think it's a wonderful trip. I particularly am intrigued by the oceanographer and the whale watching, having worked as a naturalist on a whale watch boat for a number of years. I think it's going to be a great trip, and Iceland is a really wonderful place. It's definitely on my next trip list.
And just,
Yes.
this is, again, I'm sorry to be the serious person, but as we discuss more and more of these, I'm very excited to see that we're reintroducing travel as part of our overall curriculum and activities for students. I just want to acknowledge that despite many opportunities for scholarships and funding and finding out ways to offset the costs, there is still, a cost to families to participate generally. And I just want to acknowledge that and say that as a committee, I hope we think about that. and thinking about ways to make these trips more eligible, more available to more students. I think it's such a great opportunity for students to be able to do this, and I know staff is aware of this, but I just think it's something, you have to opt into these trips, and sometimes that by in and of itself just leaves people out of the loop. We are a wonderfully supportive community, and I hope we can continue to make these opportunities available for students who may never have this chance unless they do it with their school. So thank you for your ongoing work on this.
Great. Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you very much.
We're ready for the Apple one-to-one technology
All right.
presentation.
All right. Well, we're excited to present to the school committee our one-to-one lease-to-own program that will be offering to the families of Newburyport. And I just wanted to say that, this work's been ongoing since I've got here in Newburyport in 2018, and I think part of my entry plan, we've accomplished a lot. It was working on late start, tuition-free kindergarten, the enhancement of dual enrollment, our internship program, restorative practices with our discipline, place-based education. So one of the other big agenda items coming in 2018 was taking a look at our technology plan, taking a look at our technology access for all students, and really developing a one-to-one comprehensive program. So as we're going to get into this presentation, and Mr. Sheridan will be up here, who's one of pioneers for us in piloting a lot of the devices at the high school. We really took a lot of time. So this work has been going on since 2019. We really wanted our program to be research-based, a well-thought-out plan, and then really that's for our operation, the internal operation, so everyone has access, it works. So there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes. I want to credit Ms. Furlong and our tech team for making sure everything is up and running as we're in the process to roll out our program. So just to go over some of the different aspects that we've been working on in the 2018 and 19 piece, and as you all know, things stopped a little bit, stopped the momentum a little bit with the pandemic. But back then, we've did site visits of other school districts. We looked at programs, curriculum impact, and instructional decisions. We really explored devices of PC and Apple over the past few years. Coming into Newburyport, we were a Chromebook district, especially for the teachers. So the teachers are very familiar with Chromebooks. And then we were looking at sustainability and looking at lease-to-own, really a family investment, versus a district-purchased device. We've piloted the math department back in January of 2020. Mr. Sheridan and the math department at the high school piloted a few different devices, but really piloted the iPads. And what we said throughout the pandemic, there were some silver linings throughout the pandemic. One of the silver linings for us was the math department, with the training in the device, really had the opportunity when we went online, remote learning, really didn't miss a beat with a lot of their instruction. We also now have 20 teachers in another cohort, and that's a K-12, and that's sponsored by our NEF. We have another cohort of 20 teachers that will be following up that other cohort. And then, as you all know, the integrated arts teachers and that entire staff have been utilizing the iPads. This fall, Principal Wolf and Ms. Furlong had multiple stakeholder meetings, so really working with a diverse group of students, parents, committee members at their looking at the devices and getting input through those various stakeholders. And then the other piece that we've been doing for the past 3 years is the internal operation investments, developing our systems, and then also our budgeting for the one-to-one. So as we all know, this was very important for us when we developed our portrait of a graduate, really looking at all of these different aspects. So the portrait of a graduate for us helped us clearly define what we're looking for, that 21st century learner, and how we need to be flexible as we move into the future of education. So part of that, we received, as you all know, with our focus groups, a lot of information from the different stakeholders that came to our focus group sessions. So for us, as we were designing to look at technology, there was 4 areas that we really wanted to focus on. And as we were looking at devices, what we were going to choose, we really wanted to look at these just 4 different aspects within our system. As you all know, public school is a very comprehensive and complex system. So we're really looking for an opportunity to meet the needs of the portrait of a graduate with advanced technology, but also meet the needs of these 4 different areas. So the first one is the educators themselves. Having uniformity for teachers is really important. From a lot of the downfalls sometimes with a fully bring your own device is a teacher could have 5 or 6 different devices within the classroom. Having uniformity where the majority of the students have one device along with the teacher allows that high-level engagement that we're talking about. And that's part of, from my experience and from all of the other districts, what they saw as a bonus. So for the teachers to get really comfortable with the technology and the students that are in front of them. The second piece is families. Having families having equity with the device. So basically my child coming into the system is going to have the same technology as every other child around them, which for us was very, very important. The other piece when we were looking at the devices is looking at a device that will carry us into the future, that has the ability to be flexible. And as we get into the program, you'll see how the lease to own program allows that ability, where throughout the lease, the updates to technology will continue until the student graduates. So when a student graduates from Newburyport High School, they're going to have the most up-to-date technology going into post-secondary or going into their workforce. That was also really, really important for us. And then also an investment for families that's affordable, throughout the program. As you look at the next aspect is the district. For us, we're always looking for sustainability. As we're looking at devices, like how are you going to sustain a comprehensive one-to-one program throughout the years? And then also systems that work within the school is really important. So our tech team has been upgrading our broadband, has been preparing for a one-to-one at the high school where possibly could have 800 students and another 100 and something staff all online, at once. You got to make sure that you have the broadband to cover that volume. And for us, that's been really important. The other piece that when we started looking at our students' needs, and we were looking for equity there. We really wanted a machine for our students that's going to enhance the learning for all students across the board, and then also looking for a device that has the ability to meet the students' needs and accommodations. And having the ability for students to have the ability to access the curriculum, access the lessons with support within the device, which was really also very important to us. And it needed to be adaptable for our students. So as we're looking at developing a one-to-one and looking at the multiple devices that you could choose from, looking at all these different lenses, we came to the conclusion of an Apple system. And the reason why Apple, on this presentation, and for the people that are watching at home, this is also posted on the website. And there's a lot of links that kinds of gives a big background on why Apple. For us, as we were going through this journey over the past 3 years, the few very important things that stood out to us was the educational visioning and planning. So really customizing the vision of our portrait of a graduate with the device that we're going to use. The other piece that Mr. Sheridan will probably talk about is the instructional coaching. Mr. Sheridan was a very high-tech savvy teacher already, but throughout the programming and the professional development, he learned some new tricks to the trade that he'll end up showing you all tonight. But you have a dedicated Apple professional learning consultant. We have online and in-person coaching that is really geared to the educator on how to enhance your instruction with the use of technology. The other piece that we really like with the Apple system is the accessibility features. It really accommodates for students with learning disabilities, for students that have issues with accessing the curriculum. There are aspects built into the device that allows for that equity for all students. And then the device management, we felt is very strong. Part of the device management for us is part of the lease is the Apple Care, where we'll have a care and support team out of the high school. So as students or staff have issues with the device, they'll be able to access the high school Apple Care support. So they're not going out to an Apple store, and we'll be able to manage their devices within the school system itself. And then the cost of ownership, when you look at the entire package for families for this investment, it's a pretty good deal in the sense of what the trade-in values are, the guaranteed buyback, in all of that. So we have did a lot of work. As I said, there's a lot of work that has gone into this through the site visits, through working with the stakeholders, through the research that we've done to really meet the needs of those 4 areas, from the families to the district to the students. You know, we felt, and for the teachers themselves, that this was the device that's really going to take us to the next level. And I'm going to call up Mr. Sheridan to kind of talk about his experience. So we're looking at the iPad Air M1, and Mr. Sheridan's going to put you through a quick lesson. Is there an assessment at the end of this, or okay?
I didn't know there was going to be
Stay
math
awake.
tonight.
All right. We'll get out of your way.
up my presentation here in just a sec. All right, so Superintendent Gallagher talked a little bit about my experience with the iPad. Just take a couple minutes of your time here to show you some of the things that I've been able to do with this device over the last couple of years. And just a quick background, past, present, and future. Started with this work back in 2019 when Apple came in and piloted a program at the high school, giving teachers, a cohort of teachers, an opportunity to play, explore, and see how an iPad would benefit us in the classroom. I jumped right in and saw an immediate use and immediate benefit. Really helped us through the COVID-19 pandemic, being able to reach students at home. They could see what's on our screen. We could continue to write. The entire math department then got on board. Through last spring, additional teachers started to work with the iPad through a PLC. The art department is now invested in that. And what's next? What are our next steps? The next steps is the students, to allow some collaboration between students and teachers on that same device. And that's what I'm excited for in the next step of this journey. So really what this iPad has allowed me to do as a teacher and will allow our students to do as learners is give unlimited access to digital tools. The things that we use every single day to enhance the teaching and learning experience. I think of it as the things that we do in the classroom every day, right, are great things. We have great teachers, we have great students, we have a great school. We can take all of those positive attributes and enhance them, right? These can make those days even better. So just to show a couple of those things. So if I take my iPad, which is wirelessly connected to the screen, the students have the same ability to connect to that same screen. So this gives me the opportunity to take my Apple Pencil and I can write and solve any type of equation or any types of notes that you would do on a day-to-day basis. So if I'm just solving an equation, x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0, I can write that on the board. If I need to neaten up my handwriting, I can convert that into an equation right away. All right. So if anyone that has messy handwriting, we can clean things up through these digital tools. It does a great job of recognizing handwriting.
I'm sold.
It also allows me to draw pictures and neaten up those pictures and then animate those pictures. So if I'm talking about circles and I want to talk about the angles within that circle. I just did this lesson in pre-calculus at the beginning of the year. I can talk about what happens as this goes around that circle. I'll talk about the different degrees in that circle and how that can apply to an arc length, to a circumference. Those are tools and drawings that we would do in an everyday class. This just allows me to enhance that. I can have unlimited access to highlighting tools where I can mark up text. I can add pictures. And then I can write on that picture if I would like to. So I think of that in terms like a science classroom. If they're doing a lab report and they're writing up a lab report, instead of just talking about and describing their lab, they could take pictures of their lab. They could mark up the pictures from that. They could take videos of a chemical reaction and include that in their lab report. These are all some of the things that this allows me to do above and beyond just paper and pencil. As a part of this, when I take notes, I have the opportunity to put audio recordings in. If I want to make myself a mental note to look back and think about later, I can hit a button, make myself a voice memo, include that in my notes. So my notebook now becomes interactive and not static. From a classroom scenario, I use this a lot as a presentation tool. So this is a lesson that I've done. This might be a handout that I give to students. So now I can provide that digitally, and all the students would have the digital tools. Okay, and one of the things I like about this is if I give this in a class, some students get distracted. They look at different problems at the same time. So if I can zoom in on one picture, I can highlight what I'm referring to. I'm talking about the angles of this triangle. What do they add up to? I can create my equation. And solve that together. But not only do I have the ability to present that to students, if they have the device in their hands, they can show that same type of work on the board. I can see their work in real time on my device as they're working. This also allows me to be mobile as I can walk around the room. Okay? So as a presentation tool, this has been fantastic. I don't have to have my back to the classroom writing on a whiteboard. I can be amongst the class. I can sit with students and continue to present at the front of the room. It also allows me to mark up pictures, change pictures. For example, in this problem, if I was focusing on this triangle, I'm trying to deal with the angles of that triangle. And you all remember that there's 180 degrees in a triangle, I'm sure. So the real focus is I'm trying to find this angle. I need to figure out what that angle is, but I have to use some other information from this picture. And that information is that these two lines are parallel. So if I have those two parallel lines with this, what we call a transversal, I've got a lot of extra noise in this picture. So one of the skills and strategies that I use as a teacher is, if you rewound 5-10 years ago, we'd take note cards and we'd be covering up part of this picture. So just focus on the pertinent information. Now I can just take all that extra information and delete it. I can white it out. I don't need any of this extra information. All I'm really looking at is the relationship between this angle and this angle within that picture. All right, so I can focus the student's attention on what's required for the question. We can go ahead and label that angle and then bring back the rest of what I need. Okay, so what this allows me to do is again, focus my attention one problem at a time, mark up the text, and draw the student's attention to the important aspects of it. The other thing this allows me to do is not only can I present these types of problems, present these types of notes, but I can also record myself. Okay, so if a student's at home and has a question, they can send that question to me, and I can make not a written response, because a written response is often pretty tricky to do in math. I can take a quick screen recording of my work, send it to them through email, through YouTube, to help answer their questions so they don't have to wait till the next day. What I'm excited for is students are then going to have that ability. They can start to show their work. They can record their work and show me where they get stuck. So that's the next part of this. This iPad does have a front and rear camera that allows us to take pictures, not just of their work, but we can also take pictures of what's on the screen through a screen capture. It still works with all of the Google software that we are presently using. A lot of teachers are very comfortable now using Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides. Moving to an Apple device doesn't mean that we have to move away from all of those great things. It's fully supported on this platform, fully supports all of our Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, still used just as effectively on an iPad as it is on any other device. Okay. But for me, the iPad has been my daily driver. It's what I use to check email. It's what I use to look things up on the web. It's what I use for data entry. It's what I use for student information. It's my one device that allows me to do everything that I need in the computing world. I do have a MacBook as well. I find myself using the iPad more than any other device because it's got everything that I need. Okay? It also has some of these enhanced features. If I am reading an online article, but I don't have the ability to really focus and read, but I want to listen to it, I have the option to do a screen reader. I can have the iPad read that content to me as opposed to me having to read it. I think of students on a bus to a game, right, where reading something might not be, they might not be able to do it, but they have their headphones in, they can do a screen reader, they can still get access to that content. We have the ability to, again, make things larger, smaller for students with vision impairments. We've used the iPad at the high school for some translating services, right, where we've had the students in the class with an iPad, the teacher in the front of the room. As the teacher is speaking in English, it is being translated in real time to the students in the class. So there's some real accessibility features that meet the unique needs of users. As a presentation tool, the iPad's been groundbreaking. Right? It's changed the way I teach. All right? It allows me to be a part of the class. It allows me all those digital tools that make the classroom experience better for students. But in the end, it becomes communication. If students have the same type of device, we're going to be able to share those digital spaces. We'll be able to work on the same problems, on the same whiteboard space at the same time. Instead of me copying papers and distributing it to the kids at the beginning of every class, I have that digitally, and with a touch of a button, every single student has it on their device instantaneously. I, as a teacher, don't have to spend time at the photocopy machine. I don't have to take time to pass it out at the beginning of class. I can make that available instantaneously to students. Now, with all of this digital work, there's also the supervision aspect of it. How do I monitor what's on student devices, what they're doing with student devices? As a part of the operating system, I have the ability to enroll every student in Apple Classroom. So Apple Classroom is just the software program that allows me to see what's on your screen while you're in my class. It's like a tethered system. So I have the ability to control and focus students. I can bring them to a particular app and make sure that they're only using that app during my class. So there is conversations and concerns about distractions and going elsewhere besides the academic purpose of the class. As a teacher, I do have control over that, which is a great feature of our Apple products. Okay. So innovation. As students get these devices, it's going to allow us to do different things. Instead of me doing just a paper and pencil test, I can ask students to record and explain their work. So their voice is a part of their assessment as opposed to just their paper and pencil. It opens up the doors to other things for me. App development and coding is a huge shift in what's coming in education. Right? There is software and that ability is built in. The augmented reality space. I have the frog up here from before. So this is just what's possible for our students. All right, the camera system on this allows me to take, this is just an app, Frogopedia. If I wanted to take a frog, and then I wanted to place it right on this desk. There we go. All right. So there's my frog. Okay. If I wanted to look at the nervous system of it, I can change the nervous system of it. Okay. Put it on the floor. Didn't end up on the table. It's right there on the floor. So it allows me to manipulate this creature through this device. Right, and this is true for not just this one app. There's conic sections in math. There's other programs. But I see this as a huge component of a science world, where not only can I look at it and explore something in a digital space, but I could change this. You know, I think some of our science teachers have already done this virtual dissection as opposed to the actual frog dissection, where we can look and see what. Some of you probably remember doing this when you were in school. Get to the good stuff here. All right, so you get the idea. You get to do your labs virtually. Now, I could take all of these pictures, I could take all of this information, and I can include it in a digital lab report. So those types of spaces are exciting. Right? And that's what I'm excited for as a teacher. When students finally get something in front of them, the possibilities and doors that opens. All right. So I look at this as the next stage in this exploration that we've done since 2019. All right, we've been kind of waiting for this moment to arrive where we've looked, we've explored, we've made a choice, and now we're ready to take it to the next level with student devices. I know it's going to take time. I know it's going to take work. It's going to take additional professional development and support, which Superintendent Gallagher mentioned has been phenomenal from the Apple team. If I ever had a question, I have one email away to get an answer. I have the ability to schedule one-on-one coaching sessions on a particular topic. As a math teacher, that's kind of sometimes a singular skill, right? And there's not too many professionals out there that have the knowledge to be able to teach a high-level math course and how I can incorporate this. The professionals at Apple Learning have those resources at their disposal. They'll put you in contact with teachers, math teachers that have used this device successfully and the lessons they have and ideas. So again, it's just opening up to possibilities. Right? What else is possible? What can we do? And that's what I'm excited for. That's me.
I'll be up next. Mr. Chairman will hang around at the end. I have just a few more slides to cover, and then we can take some questions. I need the digital superintendent. Sarah liked that one. Yeah, you want to just switch it over? All right, as Mr. Sheridan, he just showed a couple things, but what we're seeing in these math classes, and also with the cohort of 20 teachers now, their instruction is fundamentally changing in the classroom, which is really exciting, especially with the professional development in the cohort of teachers really working together and collaborating. So this is what we're looking at, a family investment, it's a 4-year lease. So the total cost of the lease is $832. But at the end of this lease, for the families, they own, fully outright own the device. In my previous experience in my previous district, we went on this journey of a lease-to-own program. It's been very successful in a few districts. In my previous one, very successful, but I'm going to talk to it as, obviously I was the principal there, but also as a parent. What we've noticed, or what I've noticed, is even as you're investing and taking breaking these payments into affordability, and we'll get into some of the costs, what was really great as a parent is when your students graduate and they're going on, either 2-year school, 4-year school, as I said, or in the business world, that is one cost that you don't have to worry about, because they're taking, with the lease to own, they're taking the most updated technology into school. The other benefit of that is all of the students' work and all of their presentations are on those devices. And because of the upgrades throughout, some of my daughter and her friends still have the same device since high school. So it's 8 years of utilizing the same device as they graduate college. So it's when we look at a family investment and working with parents and being a parent myself, I mean, these are the things, we purchase cell phones, we purchase video games, we purchase a lot of things for our children, but this investment has a direct impact on the child's education in the classroom. And I think it's something that as a parent you're excited for. As we go through the scholarship support. So we've invested in identified scholarship programs for the successful LEASE programs in other districts. So there's really, we like this program for a scholarship support. So you can see on various degrees of 20%, 80% paid, 40% scholarship, and a 60% scholarship. And I think the big piece of this is families, I think all families, once they invest in this type of program, they take ownership of the device. So for all of the programs that have students and families partnering with the districts, you see less breakage, you see more ownership, and then the repairs themselves are almost minimal to none because the kids and the families pretty much own the device as they're going through the school. So we wanted, the other piece is we want to make this offer to all families. And so really we're offering, and we're going to be presenting to the high school and 8th graders on December 13th moving into next year. So we wanted to give this opportunity for all families. So people will join our Lease to Own program. The benefits of the Lease to Own are extremely helpful for families, much better than anyone buying a device at the Apple Store. Working with us through the Lease to Own program, you get to break up those payments. You have the full warranty. You have the Apple Care. There's a lot of things when we work with the families that we're going to explain about the benefits. The families that already have a device, they're going to just continue to use their own device. So there's like really 3 options. We're really encouraging families for this program because when you look at just going out and buying a device, you know, at the Apple Store or Best Buy or whatever, you're not going to be able to get, I think, the price as low as that we have it for the families. And then plus the care that you're going to get is just so beneficial. And then the other piece is for the staff members, like the math department and Kevin Sheridan or our science department, will have loaners within the classroom. So a student that does not have a device or does not want to be involved in the Lease to Own program, there'll be loaners in every classroom so everyone at Newburyport High School will have access to technology. But we're just strongly encouraging, the Lease to Own for families. So for going into next year, if you were a senior and you wanted to buy into this Lease to Own program, you'd have 2 payments of $408. If you're a junior and you wanted to opt into the Lease to Own program, it's a 2-year lease, 4 payments of $200. If you're a sophomore, as you can see, 6 payments of $136. And then, as we said, if you're a freshman moving in, it's 8 payments of $102. So it's 2 payments per year. As we said, with the Lease to Own within the system, the families in their investment, they have, as I said, there's a lot of opportunity for them to break those payments up. You would take those prices there, and then also, as I said, we'll have a reduced cost for the families in need. So that's kind of our overall presentation for today. We do have our leasing program guide for more details. So we also put that on the website. So the work of the committee that Mr. Wolf and Lisa Furlong set up, they worked with the administration and they developed kind of an FAQ, all you need to know about the device in the Lease to Own program. As I said, our goal is for every family to partner with us on this educational program, and we really think it's a it's going to be extremely successful. And that's all I have.
The handbook you referenced, is that what you handed out to us before the
Correct,
meeting?
yes. So that has a lot of details. We felt we wanted to just kind of give the overview of what we're presenting to the high school on the 13th, and then we'll also have that available FAQ for families. And Mr. Wolf, myself, Mr. Sheridan, Ms. Furlong will be working with the families on the 13th. Mr. Callahan was also part of that committee and been on this adventure with me since 2019.
Yeah,
so.
I would have done it like 3 years ago.
Yeah, well.
Jump right in. I do have a question though.
Sure.
What if they leave the district, the kids? What happens? They get an opportunity to continue that?
Yes, they would have the opportunity to
Buy it outright?
correct.
They couldn't continue on the payment plan.
No, because I think once they leave, what we've done in my previous district is sometimes if a student was leaving, they would pass on the lease to another family.
Oh, okay.
So like an incoming family would just pick up that lease and the device. So there's ways of working with families that leave the district.
Thanks.
Other questions? Ms. Higgins?
Just considering the cost to families, what are the benefits of this as opposed to a mobile cart, especially for teachers who might not be as interested in using these in a
Yeah,
regular
so
basis?
that's a great question. So we also, as part of our site visits and looking at mobile carts, so the whole idea is to have the technology with our students, like 24/7. So having them to have the ability, when asked, to utilize the technology, I think is really important, especially if we're really pushing our students to be innovative and creative. You don't want to be doing a math lesson and then say on Friday we'll have the carts, and then that will be the time we're going to be innovative. So I think for having the devices in the students' hands, but also there's an extensive professional development plan that's going to happen for our teachers. So everyone will be utilizing the device within the classes. The other feedback that we received from staff, especially the ones that aren't as tech savvy, is that multiple device in the classroom. You know, so it's if a student has an issue, you know, if we're going to be doing this great lesson and I have 5 students with different devices, and as we all know, I can't log on, and the teacher goes over and tries to help them log on the PC, and then this student, you know, can't print, and then so what ends up happening is eventually the teachers, our teachers, are unbelievable. They want to get to the objectives of the lesson, so sometimes they'll just say, all right, guys, let's put our devices away, take out your notebook, and now here we go. So by having teachers train on the same device, along with the majority of the students with the same device, then exactly what we're trying to do with the innovation and the being creative within the class is constant. It's not, hey, on Friday we're going to be innovative. Today we're just doing our notes. So for us, that's from working with the successful districts that have kind of pulled this off. That was a big key. Is regardless of what device you're going to choose, it's to your benefit for your faculty to operate under one device instead of having a multiple device platform, especially if you're trying to be futuristic thinking and being tech savvy. So we have the cohort of teachers. Part of our planning is to have the cohort of teachers right now that are experienced, like Mr. Sheridan, that are going to work with their departments and their colleagues and share what they've already done. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, thank you.
Good. All right. Sometimes I ramble.
Sometimes.
Yes.
I have a question. Just looking at the FAQ here, it looks like this is coming up very quickly. If I'm reading this correctly, the enrollment period and payments start next month. Am I reading January of 2023?
I don't think that.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
is that not right?
The payments start in January?
Well, we're gonna start rolling out
Enrolling.
enrollment.
Yes. Yes.
Through
Yeah.
March.
January through March 2023.
Correct.
First payment is due at that time.
Right.
So it seems awfully quick. I mean, I know there's been a lot of work leading up to this point, but hearing about it now, like this is happening, what is the rollout in terms of students actually using the devices and teachers being on board and ready to implement them as part of their instruction?
Yeah, so I think there's two things. I think the work of the cohort, right? So the math department and also the science department at the high school. So, and throughout the district, more and more of our teachers want these because they're actually seeing the instruction change and they're listening to their colleagues on it's just like a whole new world for them. So the enthusiasm of our staff, I'm not worried about. The rolling this out now, we kind of wanted to roll this out now because number one, the holidays are coming and some families are looking to purchase technology. So we wanted to get that out there. And then we want our enrollment to start in January to March, where the payment would probably be due in March, but we're looking to gather a commitment from families so we can put the order in for the iPads moving into next school year. So our goal is to try to encourage as many families as we can right now to take advantage of the lease to own. There is benefits if people are looking for the holidays to purchase a device and they haven't yet. That's kind of why we want to get the word out. And then once a family commits, they'll get a little certificate with Mr. Wolf's thumbs up that they'll be getting a device in the fall. But for us, as Mr. Callahan said, we really did our due diligence. This has been a long process, and not only looking at the devices of Apple and PC, but then now we're going to an Apple device, and then kind of vetting all of those, from the Mac Air to all of those different devices. So for us, as we were working through those four key components of a one-to-one and the needs for everybody, we felt like this device has, all of the options that meet the needs of all of those four areas. So for us, we want to get this up and rolling, and so the reason why it's coming out faster, we want to get those orders. You have to get those orders in sooner than later. And I think after our presentation at the high school, a lot of families have already reached out to Mr. Wolf about this and said, should I hold off on purchasing technology at this point? And Mr. Wolf said, yes, hold off. So, we're hoping we have our initial run-through, a large amount of families that want to invest in the program. But then we'll see how it goes once we roll it out.
My other question was about the scholarship program, how families will qualify and where the scholarship funds will come from.
Yeah, so we're working on the details of that right now. Some districts use different measures for the scholarship. Some use like tax returns and things of that nature for some documentation. We have reached out to some other, businesses to support the one-to-one. So we have some of those details that we're working on now that we'll be able to roll out, I think, in the next few weeks. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I mean, if you are able to identify the need or the anticipated need for scholarships, it would be helpful to have that conversation during the budget process. So we understand before you make the decision to go to outside sources, what that gap is based on what you decide to use as your threshold.
Correct.
I think it's just important for us to before we go outside to understand what could be covered within the budget request.
I agree, and I think some communities do it differently. Some utilize their Ed Foundation. Some utilize, depending on what the number is, but allocating $25,000 in the budget to, yeah. So those are the type of details that we'll have, But our key right now is to really have our meeting to truly encourage families to invest in this program, because it's ultimately, to me, it's money worth spending, because all of the other stuff that we buy our children, this one's going to have a direct impact on their education. So something to be proud of.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. I think your packet actually lists the Child Nutrition Program income eligibility guidelines as the threshold. So if you guys are reviewing that, I think that's worth revisiting. If
Yeah.
that's not the appropriate level, I know we've talked about
Well, I
that.
think we're still trying to get to the details on it. I think that's
Yeah.
one aspect.
Yeah, I would encourage you to think about that threshold, whether that's appropriate or not, because, yeah.
And I think and just in my experience, when we rolled out, man, we did this. We were one of the first districts to do this back in 2010, and that was a big concern of families. Like, how are they? But what we noticed, in my experience, was it was actually a great equalizer. Some of our families can't afford to go to the Apple store and buy a $1,000 computer, $800 computer, even a $500 computer. But by working with the schools, they had the ability to be on the same access and playing field with their peers. So that was one of those unexpected consequences of a lease-to-own program. So that's something I think as we go through the process, we're going to be very conscious of making sure that we identify those students and work with those families.
Any other questions?
I guess the only follow-up is just to say that if we are intending to be as inclusive as possible, which I know we are, the informational meeting at the high school, I hope there's some effort being made to reach out to families who may not be paying attention to that, correspondence, or may think it's not something they need to worry about or not know to worry about. So every effort we can do to reach out to families who this kind of may seem like something they wouldn't want to participate in because they don't understand it or are scared of anything that has to do with spending more money. So, which I think
agree.
in this day and age, that's more and more of our families. So, I know the staff is cognizant of that, but I just want to encourage you to make sure you're tracking who's attending those meetings and making sure we're reaching out to ones we particularly think need that extra outreach.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we're doing the 13th. We'll see what the turnout is.
Yeah.
But I foresee us within, this is going to be an ongoing, community events to encourage more and more families. And if we get more and more questions, we can add it to the FAQ and then, do more meetings with everybody. So we just want to make sure this is why, like in some districts, they would just focus on one grade. But, as this came out, I just think it's too good of opportunity not to open it up for everybody. And then see how many students and families we can get. So. But, for the people that are watching, everyone is going to have access to technology next year. So we're not excluding. But this is just a good opportunity for people to invest in.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one thing I wanted to make sure that folks who are watching this understand that even if they don't participate in the lease program, they will have access to the benefits of the new technology in the schools. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yep. And we just really want to push that out before the holidays, So this would be a nice little present.
Do you want to stay right there for MCAS, or you start?
I get to go home now. No, I'm just kidding. That's we're gonna call up Dr. Abrams.
Okay, great.
We're bringing up the heavy hitter here for the MCAS presentation. I just want to thank a couple things. Obviously, Lisa Furlong for all her work with the technology, her new tech team, and then what we really wanted to focus on. Mr. Abrams is gonna kind of give an overview in the beginning. really focus on those internal assessments. And then Dr. Abrams will talk about some of the MCAS data. Because I think for school committee, what I've been hearing for a couple of years is what are those internal assessments that we have in place and how are we measuring growth? So I'm just really proud of the presentation that the team put together, and I'll sit back and enjoy it. So no further ado, Dr. Abrams.
Can I make a request?
Sure.
In your presentation, wherever there's an acronym or something that's not spelled out, if you could try to spell it out for those of us.
Absolutely. We were pretty
Yeah.
cognizant of that ahead of time. I
Great.
think we caught it them.
Good, thank you so much, I appreciate that.
I'll make sure.
Okay, awesome.
This pointer, but I think your pointer has a, Burnley has a thing too, right? Yeah, mine, this one's stronger. This one's stronger. Stronger. It's just this thing.
In November.
You'd have to hit the button. It's up to you. All right.
You get a break, huh?
I do.
Which is council.
All right, folks, thank you very much for having us here tonight to talk a little bit about internal and external assessments in Newburyport Public Schools. So I might not look it, but I'm actually a very avid runner. Now, I know I don't look it, but I'm an avid runner. And every year I run maybe 5 or 6 different road races in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Now, when I run these road races, I always begin by saying, where am I? I look back to my previous year. If it's a 5-mile race, I say, okay, I ran that in 40 minutes. Now, I set myself up with a training schedule. Maybe run some sprints, maybe run some hills. And I say to myself, how do I improve in my running so that this year I can get better? And then I have my road race. I have a 5-mile road race. I start running my race. And every mile I have a formative assessment where it says, okay, my first mile, 9 minutes. Uh-oh, I gotta get a little bit faster. Second mile, 8 minutes. Oh, I gotta get faster. 7 minutes, etc. And then eventually I finish my road race. I have my time. I'm at 38 minutes. Beautiful. I have my summative assessment. I've improved upon what I had last year. Now, in my world, some of these road races actually have cohorts. Now, when they have cohorts, I usually qualify for Clydesdale or ultra heavyweights. And in this cohort group, I have a better representation of like-minded, like-built people, so I can see my performance with that cohort. Now, a lot of you are probably sitting there saying, why is he talking about road races? Well, that is a very concrete example, I believe, of how we use assessments. We have the pre-assessment, where we start from. We have the formative assessments. As we move along and progress, we check in, how are we doing? How can we get better? And then, of course, we have the summative assessment at the end. How did I do? How did I measure? How did I grow as a runner or a student? How did I achieve as a runner or a student? So that is our segue into talking about internal and external assessments in Newburyport Public Schools. And I want to highlight something that we've been highlighting all year long. It's the work we've done for the past couple years. It's really about where our students are headed, what's our portrait of a graduate. So this is just to remind us of when our 12th grade students graduate, what we like them to look like, how we like them to be physically, socially, how we like them to be literate, etc. So we're going to talk a little bit about assessments in general, and one of the first questions we always ask is, why do we assess students? Now, we assess students for the same reason that I went through an assessment process with my running. We start off with our baseline. We pre-assess students. It's the beginning of a unit, maybe it's the beginning of a year. We want to know, where are these students on the benchmark? Once we have that benchmark, then we can start to build our formative assessments around moving that student towards completing the framework, moving towards the framework. We have our formative assessments piece by piece in, and then of course we have the summative assessment at the end. How did that student grow? How did that student achieve towards that framework standard? And that's essentially how we use assessment: pre, formative, and summative. Now that's the why, and I've been talking very abstractly. How about the what? In Newburyport schools, what do we use to assess students? Well, we are in a process, the second year of a process of building our curriculum maps, and this year we're in stage 2 of our curriculum maps, which is really looking at assessments. And in stage 2, we look at, here are the standards we're supposed to be assessing. Does the assessment actually measure that? And then we look at the assessments and we can change them, we can adjust them as needed based on the student results. Now in Newburyport schools, some of these assessments look like formative and ongoing assessments, things like our DIBELS, our iReady. We have lots of summative assessments. A couple weeks ago I was in a 6th grade classroom and they were writing an argument essay on whether wild animals should be kept as pets. A nice summative assessment on argument writing. We have journals, we have performance-based tasks. I think of the classic example of building a volcano to see if we have knowledge of the science of volcanoes. We have observational tools like checklists, anecdotal notes that we might take as we're observing students and talking to them. We might talk to students. How are you doing? This is a hallmark of our writing workshop. How's it going? How are you doing? Diagnostic interviews. We have computer adaptive testing. For all of these assessments, we have benchmark. We're working towards the frameworks, and those are aligned with the rubrics that we utilize with these assessments. And then, of course, we'll talk a little bit later about our high stakes assessment, our MCAS, and the pieces that we built towards having students grow and achieve on the MCAS. So when do we assess students? So in Newburyport schools, we have assessment calendars built so that we have a chronology and a timeline when we assess students. This allows us to baseline students and then to progress monitor them to see how they're moving towards achievement in the standards. Now, these assessment calendars are built with the through the central office curriculum and instruction team, as well as the literacy and the math coaches at the Bresnahan School, Allie Burns and Rebecca Stewart. You'll see here our universal screening begins in early September. We have data meetings, progress monitoring as we move throughout the year. Now, having this chronology established, having this system in place allows us to properly use our multi-tiered system for support. It allows us to identify students who need some sort of support and intervention, put those in place, and then monitor progress on that for that student. One of the things about data is we have all this data, we collect all this data. If we don't use it, it's absolutely worthless. If I don't look back to my runs last year, I don't know how to set my goals for this year. It's the same thing with data with our students. So this year we established a district data team built of administrators and teachers. We also have a district vertical curriculum team that works specifically with the curriculum. Oftentimes both of these teams work in collaboration with each other so we can talk across the different teams. We also have, at a school level, we have school-based data teams. Those are often led by principals and curriculum leaders. Or at the high school, at the higher levels, it might be a grade level team, 9th grade English, 9th grade math, along with the ILT, the instructional leader, and the principals. Once we have this data collected, we have our data team meetings, we identify students that might need interventions. Well, what do we do with this stuff? We communicate to families. This is how your student is doing. This is how he or she is growing. This is how they're progressing towards the standards. It allows us as teachers to adjust our instruction. If we look at something's not really working, a student's not making progress, what am I doing wrong that I can adjust to have this student succeed in my classroom? It is budget season, so some of this data and this data analysis and our look at these assessments really go toward making budget decisions. Maybe we identify a gap in the curriculum that we can plug with a new program, some new curriculum. Maybe we have an instructional method that we want to improve upon. We could bring in a trainer, some professional development to allow our teachers to become better and have our students achieve and grow. As a district, we are really still in the growth stage of using data effectively. We've put the systems in place, and we're in the process of using it and growing. So on the slide here, you'll see kind of a typical data meeting. So if we have our data team meeting, let's say we have our universal screenings, we'll come in with the data, we'll start to analyze it, we'll look for some patterns. Using that data, we'll identify a student that might need a reading or math intervention. We'll put that intervention in place. We'll periodically do progress monitoring checks to see if that intervention is working. And based on the success of that intervention, we might have an alternate intervention. Maybe we'll pull back from that intervention if a student is succeeding. And this really goes along with our 3 tiers of instruction. So our first tier will be that whole class research-based core instruction. The whole classroom is getting that. We have a DCAP built, a district curriculum accommodation plan to assist teachers with providing accommodations to make sure that students can access the curriculum. Our tier 2 would be our targeted small group interventions. Maybe we have a group of 4 or 5 students who need some work with fluency, or we have a small group. Teacher can work with that small group on that targeted intervention. And then, of course, we have our tier 3. That's for students that need a little more intensive intervention. Maybe they're seeing a reading specialist to work one-on-one to improve their reading. We're going to cycle back quite a bit to coming back to the student, because sometimes we have to talk about data, we forget a little bit about the student. So in Newburyport, we're really focused on seeing the data of the whole child. And by the whole child, of course, we mean cognitive. We want to talk about their academic development and progress. We also talk about their physical. One of our outcomes for our Portrait of a Graduate is physical well-being. We're also concerned with their social and emotional growth. We do have internal social emotional learning programs and data that we utilize to also provide interventions for the social emotional success, achievement, and growth of our students. So with that being said, I'm going to pass off the clicker to my esteemed colleagues, Ms. Rossi and Ms. Sokolowski, who will talk specifically about the Bresnahan School and the Mullen School before I come back to dig into some of the external data, specifically the MCAS.
Okay, so you've heard us speak about PBIS before, Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports. It's a school-wide program where we use explicit instruction to promote positive behavior, and we also tie that to an acknowledgement system. So at the Bresnahan, we follow the school rules of be safe, be kind, be responsible. At the Mullen way, the motto is respect, responsibility, and kindness. At the Bresnahan, we use a clipper seal stamp, so a cute little baby seal. Whenever we see students do something unexpected or something wonderful, we stamp their hand and give them specific praise tied to what they are doing. And at the Mullen, the same acknowledgement system exists, but they use an anchor stamp. We use the stamps to hold weekly, monthly, and periodic rewards for students, whole classes, and whole schools throughout the year. Whole school goals. At the Bresnahan and the Mullen, we also do morning meeting with Fidelity. All classrooms begin their day with morning meeting. It's a responsive classroom tool, which is evidence-based to promote a positive classroom community. There's a script and a format that the teachers follow, and the students get used to a routine, and it helps them get to know each other outside of their academics. Tied in with the morning meeting, we also have the Second Step program. It's embedded into the morning meeting. Again, it's an evidence-based program that teaches...
Ms. Sokolowski, can you just pull the microphone up?
Thank you. Second Step is a program embedded in our morning meeting. It's evidence-based, and it teaches skills for resolving conflict, working with others, forming healthy relationships, and making good decisions. And the counselors also periodically come in and do whole group lessons to address the social, emotional needs of the class.
So the great thing about this vertical piece is that PBIS starts at the Bresnahan, it comes all the way up through the Mullen, same with the Second Step. So there's a lot of social emotional pieces that are aligned for the elementary schools. And I think, kind of the global statement around social emotional learning is if kids aren't feeling safe at school and they're not feeling socially and emotionally healthy, they're not going to be able to access their academics. So we feel this is just as important as the academic data is. So we use Second Step. It's also a research-based program. At the 4th and 5th grade level, there are 4 lessons around bullying prevention. It's recognizing, reporting, and refusing bullying behaviors, as well as understanding the role of the bystander, which, again, a lot of these things are lifelong skills. If you see something, say something. So there are lessons modeled around what can you do if you see something, what can you do, who can you talk to, what can you say. And then the other lessons focus on resolving conflicts, working with others, forming healthy relationships, and making good decisions. And you can see the the 3 instructional units are titled right there. It's empathy, emotion management, and problem solving. And again, all of the social emotional stuff is really, they're all life skills that we're teaching students so they can be successful as they move through their school years.
We are also committed to mindfulness at the Bresnahan, and the way that we approach mindfulness, both at the Bresnahan and the Mullen, is that it is a tool that all students and teachers can access throughout their day if they're feeling stressed, if they have peer conflict, we have a variety of systems set up to help explicitly teach mindfulness, and then we encourage it to be woven in organically. The whole school has a mindful moment during the morning announcements. We do video morning announcements where teachers and students record the greeting for the day, and they lead the mindful moment, so the whole school participates in that together. Each class also has mindfulness time built into their schedule. Sometimes this will be a couple minutes after recess or after transition to help the students settle. It helps with behavior. It helps just get everyone ready to continue to access learning. Our after-school Clipper courses that we started this year, there's a yoga Clipper course and a mindfulness one that all students are invited to participate in. And we have a crew block this year, which is 20 minutes, and it's co-led by our PE teachers and our classroom teachers. CREW stands for Collaboration, Recreation, Exploration, Wellness. And it's a team building time where the staff works with students on social and emotional learning goals and team building together. We also have 2 school adjustment counselors and a social worker that are accessible to students throughout the year.
Just a quick comment about mindfulness is taught as a strategy. So it's another strategy, it's another skill that we're teaching students that they can learn to access if they are feeling anxious, feeling stressed. Just as if the baseball pitcher was stepping off the mound, I'm saying this for Mr. Gallagher's benefit, I'm giving my baseball example. Or we're giving a presentation, you take a break, you step back, you take a breath, you have a minute to think, you get yourself in gear, you're visualizing something. That's what we're teaching the kids to do. So it's another strategy around self-regulation. And there has been a significant increase in anxiety and mental health issues across all age levels. So you can see up here, there's a number of activities we do with the Mullen as well. Something that's a little bit different, the Mullen has been in collaboration with Beth Houlihan from Roots to Wings Yoga for years now. That has been sponsored by the PTO every year. That was originally started with our school counselor, Maggie Flaherty, who is wonderful. We do some small groups that may incorporate yoga poses. Some of that is with we've had teachers that are specifically trained in the Little Flower Yoga curriculum, as well as our counselors. And then we have a wellness day in June for each grade. And this is school-wide where students move through different stations that focus on, they might do yoga. If Beth is available, she'll come and do yoga with the students. They might draw art. They will talk about gratitude. They'll go on a nature walk with their class. Again, it's just teaching kids that different strategies are available to help with coping and management. In terms of, sorry, I'm losing my voice again. In terms of measuring social emotional development, the Mullen has been using an assessment called the BIMAS, Behavior Intervention Monitoring Assessment System. We've been using this for a number of years, and honestly, I want to say it's at least 5 years. And it's a universal screening. And it's basically the same as we assess students academically. The teachers are looking at and answering questions around like behavioral concerns, student affect, how are students approaching work, how are their social skills or relationships. And we use this, the teachers do this 3 times a year, and after every time we do it, we sit down, we look at the data with the counselors, myself, my assistant principal, school psych, school nurse, and our school counselors. We look at the data, Any student that is showing that they may be at risk in any area at all, we then check in with the teacher. We provide intervention for the student as needed. It may be that we're providing intervention for the families as well. So it's the same as an academic intervention. We're looking at this, we're making sure that no student falls through the crack in the social emotional piece as well as the academic piece. Is this you?
Okay, so now on to our internal academic data sources. Some internal resources that we utilize at the elementary level are Lexia, Amplify, and iReady. Lexia is an adaptive daily program where we can look into data to inform instruction, and we use the data from Lexia more on an individual student basis. On the next few slides, we'll be showing you some of the internal data baselines from the school year that inform our instruction, guide us to students who may require more support, and help guide us through the year to know whether or not our instruction and interventions are meeting our students' needs. This year, we are utilizing iReady for the first time with our grades K through 8. At the Bresnahan, grades K through 3, we use this as a diagnostic tool just for math, and we use it consistently in every classroom. Our math coach, Allie Burns, meets with grade level teams and individual staff to support the use of the data. On the right-hand side, you'll see the DIBELS composite scores. We are also utilizing a tool called MClass, which is an online testing platform that has made giving the DIBELS assessment so much easier for all of our teachers, especially our Title I and EL departments. This data shows us where we are and where we need to go. And so now moving on to grade 1. As we look at the data, we can see, how were our grade 1 students doing at the beginning of the year and comparing them to the end of the year standards. So as you can see, our students are approaching. That's great because we don't expect them to know all of the end of first grade standards at the beginning of first grade. Looking
on the DIBELS scores, can you just explain the descriptors for the different core plus, core, strategic, and intensive, what that means?
Yep, so looking at the core plus, that corresponds with the iReady data, so above grade level. So that's students who are kind of a little bit above core, which is, I guess, grade level expected. Core is grade level expected.
So it's actually the same code from over here?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, so strategic's approaching intensive's below.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, we tried to keep the colors consistent, so.
Thanks.
Yes, yeah, I'll keep going. So grade 2, again, you can feel free to take a look. The data speaks for itself. And again, this is beginning of the year testing on end of the year standards. And grade 3, and for some reason the colors are a little off on this one, but the iReady and the DIBELS have orange instead of bright yellow.
I'll jump in just to talk a little bit more about iReady since this is our first year using it. And again, we're using it K to 8, which is fantastic because then we're able to, really track growth and identify specific needs individually while also looking at possible changes, that might need to be made in the curriculum. So we're using it for math and for literacy. We switched from Star 360 to iReady, and part of the reason we did that was Star 360 didn't seem to be, the data that we were seeing on Star 360 didn't seem to be well aligned with what we were seeing on our students' MCAS scores, as well as teacher feedback on what they were seeing in the classroom from those consistent assessments that they do daily. And another reason is a great piece of iReady is teachers can dig in very quickly and very easily to, I can go in and see what skills Jamie needs to improve on, and not just those skills, but there's also lessons and ideas and lessons on iReady that the teachers can use immediately, either in individual interventions or small group interventions, however they choose to use it. So it's very user-friendly. Star 360 was not as user-friendly at all. What else was there? So I think, in terms of this data, like Jamie said, it's the beginning of the year data, but you'd notice if like we went back to the kindergarten slide and now to the grade 4 slide as an example. The kindergartens were strong, in geometry. Well, in kindergarten, geometry is a lot about recognizing shapes, and as you're moving on to each grade level, especially when you're hitting grade 4, there's a lot of application. Grade 4 went up in operations and algebraic thinking and lower in geometry. And geometry is a lot about really applying it. I go into classes and, students are, the algebra and geometry they're doing at 4th and 5th grade level is pretty amazing. They're doing stuff that I can remember doing in high school, which is a little scary that they're doing that now. But you can just see that through the growth, we're really able to, again, just the way we can dig in with the BIMIS, we can dig in with iReady. And another point real quick I want to make about iReady is that the iReady data is immediate. The MCAS data comes a year after. And that's great. We absolutely look at it. We looked at our iReady data and our MCAS data at the beginning of the school year. The Mullen teachers looked at all their data. They put intervention plans in place for any students that needed them for Tier 1, Tier 2 interventions. Kids that are beyond that, we have a math interventionist, we have a literacy interventionist. So, this gives us immediate feedback. We can see exactly where a student needs specific skill building, and we can also look at, what areas are we weak in. I think that's it.
So I'm back. So I'm going to continue and talk a little bit more about external assessments now that we've really looked at the internal assessments. And I want to cycle back and just show some pictures of students, because sometimes with all this data, we forget about what this data is telling us. It's telling us about the progress of our students. If you look at these photos here, we have students in the Galapagos that are studying science in the bottom left. Bottom right, we have students that are at Model United Nations in Montreal with thousands of kids across the world, speaking, listening, collaborating with people on international affairs. We have students who have accomplished specific behavioral and academic goals, and they're rewarded with challenging hikes as a reward. We have students in the top left as part of the top left is a collage from the Knock Middle School about the speaker series where we bring in people to talk about careers. In the very top, we have students in the 4th grade, I believe, that did the Declaration of Independence. So just cycling back to the students, which we'll do a couple more times, to ground this data in the faces that matter to us. Yes?
I ask a question on internal before you move over to external. So looking at that data that you just presented, what did that tell you all and the school principals? Your beginning of the year data, how did that adjust your teacher coaching, your teacher observations, your goals, your PD? What did that tell you, and how did you react?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and that's an enormous question to unpack, because the data, we can get so granular with the data, and we can do so many things with it. So if we go back to some of this earlier stuff, we go back to kindergarten. Well, actually, I'll give you a great example here, where we have the, so for instance, let's go to kindergarten Dibbles composite scores. On the right, we have strategic and intensive. So we identify these students that might need strategic interventions. We identify those students, and we put in place those strategic interventions. So maybe they're weak in fluency, we have them doing small group fluency work. Intensive, maybe they need a reading specialist.
I feel like Tom is doing an amazing job jumping in, and as you mentioned principals, so I think, so I know I mentioned it a couple minutes ago, but we literally sat, we used staff meeting time, early release time to sit and look at every student's data. The teachers then broke down, so they broke down the standards in geometry, they broke down the standards in measurement and data, operations and algebraic thinking, and looked at each specific student to see where the strengths were in their specific classroom, because some classrooms had, a group of 5 students who were fantastic with geometry, that maybe that was just a strength of theirs. So then what we did with that is not only did we make the intervention plans for specific students in their own classrooms, we also looked at ways we can enrich for students that were, maybe higher on certain skills and standards. So there is a piece with the curriculum where the teachers incorporate math stations, and then the math stations gives a really good opportunity for teachers to kind of dig in individually and in small groups. Does that answer?
It does.
Okay.
There are lots of fun ways, even that reminded me too, like even at the 4th and 5th grade level, we identify these more of our students that are more advanced in their literacy skills, and we put together a program to help differentiate for those students, working in groups, reading higher level novels, etc. So lots of information from that data. Now it's time for external stuff. So before we jump into the external data, there's a little bit of context that we need to provide. The first big piece is really a look at time on learning in Newburyport Public Schools in the state as a whole. So the pandemic has had a significant impact on our time on learning. If you look at the chart down the bottom, 2021, 2022, we have almost 50% of our students who are absent for 10 plus days. Compare that to 2019, where it was almost half of that. Chronically absent, which is equated to 10% of school days, 18 days, we have 17 and a half, a little over 17 and a half students that are absent for 18 days of school or more. This year, DESE actually added the Department of Education and Department of Early and Secondary Education. They actually added a third category, chronically absent, students that are absent 20% of school days. 18 times 2, 36 school days. We had about 3% of our students that are absent for 20% of school days. That's about 70 students district-wide. Now, this is just looking at students. You get COVID, you're out for 5 days. This also impacts our teaching staff. A teacher might get COVID, might be out 5 or even 10 days. Imagine you're a student who's out for 5 days. They return to a classroom who has a substitute teacher because your teacher is out for 5 days. It's significantly impacted our time on learning. Recently, DESE has called this time on learning, this absentee, they've called it an epidemic. Time on learning with a teacher in person matters.
I have a question.
Shoot.
So, do those percentages count? Hey, I had to stay out for a week because of DESE's own rules?
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so.
Well, it's about.
You can't go, and then we're gonna say, oh, but look at this thing we've kind of helped create in a way. Right? They're saying it's an epidemic, but it's because of a pandemic. I guess, I question figures like this because they're totally irrelevant to what happened 2 years ago. I mean, I'm thinking about your MCAS stuff. In 4 years, we had 4 different tests for MCAS. So how can we even look at any of this data accurately relative to the year before?
And Brian, that's
basically the point.
Yeah, that's a great point you're making. One of the themes that we're going to keep reemphasizing is 2022. It's a new benchmark year. We're starting fresh.
Well, I guess my question is this. So then, and a lot of it ends up being political. You see on, talking heads will say, oh, look how terrible the state of Massachusetts MCAS scores are, which I don't find them to be that bad. And honestly, I'm not a fan of standardized testing in the first place. But how does the district then respond to that? Because we can't do anything about it. So as a school committee, right? We're not in control of the curriculum or what DESE does. So I guess I'm just trying to ask you, I'm not putting you on the spot. I want to know what the district is planning to do. We already know all this, all the bad news.
Yeah.
So what do you guys want to do to make it better with what we have from before?
I'd like to see the rest of the presentation though, because I think some of this information, I'm not actually I think this is important I think that's a good question, but can we just see the data? Let Dr. Abrams finish, because I think you probably have some responses.
And I'll definitely cycle back to that and hopefully provide some context so that people can see the multiple factors that went into kind of the last couple of years and where we're at now, and where we're kind of beginning another journey together. The other piece, and I know that you were just talking about it, was contextualizing what students have actually taken this test. So just for a little bit of a chronology, 2019 was our last full year of test administration. 2020, no tests were administered for obvious reasons. 2021, half the test was administered to grades 3 to 8, the full test for grade 10, and then 2022 we kind of returned to full test. So to put that in perspective, our grades 3, 4, and 5 have never had a full MCAS test. And I think that kind of goes to your point a little bit, where they haven't had that test. Grade 10, they haven't had a full test since 7th grade. So let's start to dig into this data a little bit. So what you're going to see on the screen in front of you is our 2022 Newburyport ELA, English Language Arts, MCAS scores, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in comparison to the state. Just going to take a minute, let us look at that, and then we're going to dig in a little bit to it. So this slide here shows a couple of things, and I think this is going to kind of go back, cycling back to your question too, Mr. Callahan. So on the bottom right-hand side here, grade 3, 4, 5, we aggregated the meets exceeds data. So we see 61% in grade 3 meets and exceeds, 44%, 52. Comparing to the state, 44, 38, 41. We still perform well in relation to the state. This is equivalent to what we did prior to the pandemic. I think a big piece that I stress in my own household and with people that I talk to is really student growth. Our students are still showing typical student growth in 4th and 5th grade between 40 and 60%. So we started at one spot, we're still showing that good typical student growth. If we specifically look at the 3rd grade MCAS, there's a couple things I want to point out here. So we have 10% of our students exceeding, 51% meeting, 31% partially meeting, 8% not meeting. Now, when we look at the data at a more granular level, we look at that 31%, and that's, when we looked at it, 13 students missed meeting expectations by 1 or 2 questions. I know I'm toggling back and forth between percentages and numbers, but if we look at that 31%, 138 is our N, it's like 39, so 13, so about a third of those could have been meeting expectations with 1 or 2 questions. When we look at it with even more depth, we actually see that our students did really well on the reading comprehension questions. Where we saw a real deficiency was in our writing. This was mirrored across the state. The state had a 25% drop in writing scores. We mirror that almost exactly. We're slightly better. We're like at 24, 23%. So when we pull that data out, some of those literacy practices and the emphasis we've had on literacy the last couple of years seem to be working with reading comprehension. Writing, not so much. I was a writing teacher for 20 years, an English teacher for 20 years. My doctorate, my dissertation is on writing. Writing is my baby. Writing is about teacher interactions. It's about process. It's about coaching students. It's about that face-to-face interaction. That's a piece that we're missing. That's an area of growth that we can see, hopefully, in the future. It's also not 1960 where your teacher would give you an essay and say, I'll see you on Friday, right? So it's much different. That interaction is so important. Question?
I just wanted to make a comment, two things on these 2 slides, and respectfully wanted to disagree just a little bit on the other slide where there was 43% growth. Even though 40 to 60 is average, 43 is certainly on the a pretty low end.
Right.
I would say 4th grade is still a problem area. I wouldn't consider 43 to be necessarily a good growth number. And then here, you said that there's 13 students that missed it by 1 or 2 questions, but just by the nature of standardized testing, there's likely an equal number that might have passed by 13 questions, by 1 or 2 questions. So it still kind of tells you there's a lot of students right around that line of regression that on any given day might have been in the not meeting expectations realm.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. The next couple slides are just the 4th and the 5th grade. Things are very equivalent in these grades as well. So when we look at the partially getting up to meeting, it's a similar number that would have made it. The writing scores are still relatively down in 4th grade. Same type of deal in 5th grade. Now's the time for our pause to reconsider the students in front of us. So here are some pictures taken, some great things that our students are doing across the district. Up on the top right-hand corner, that was a 4th grade debate, very high level argument back and forth, speaking and listening, writing skills. Some of you may have been there, parents were invited to that. That was at the end of last year. The bottom right-hand side, we have our student from a public speaking class at the high school going down to the Bresnahan 1st grade and reading a book to the 1st graders. On the left-hand side, a young lady working on her math. And the top left, we have students that have checked out books that are reading in the library. So here are our 2022 Newburyport Math MCAS scores, very similar to the slide on ELA. We have 3rd, 4th, and 5th. We have the state 3rd, 4th, and 5th, exceeding, meeting, partially, and not meeting. And then down here, we have very similar meets, exceeds, aggregate down the bottom right, 56%, 28%, 39% respectively against the state. And then we have student growth percentage, grade 4 math. To your point, Ms. Higgins, 22%, definitely a low figure, an area of growth for us as a district. 5th grade, 48%, getting up towards that kind of mid-typical student growth range. So here's our 3rd grade, 7% exceeding, 50% meeting, 39% partially meeting, 4% not meeting expectations. Again, out of those partially meeting, 11 students missed meeting expectations by 1 or 2 questions. Fourth grade. And then 5th grade. Now, I'd like you to recall Mr. Sheridan's dissected frog earlier as we transition to our talk about 5th grade science. So Newburyport 2022 Science MCAS, 5th grade results, Science, Technology, Engineering, 7% exceeding, 42% meeting, 37% partially, and then 14% not meeting. And I think a question that's come up is what do we do with this data? How have we used this data specifically? So this is actually something we did at the high school level with MCAS data. So we looked at our data, we identified a question that we thought needed some work, question number 6, which talks about how 2 characters in 2 different excerpts are similar and different. We thought that was an area of growth. We pulled that question out from the MCAS cache of questions, and we built in specific curriculum that dealt with 2 different excerpts so we can work on that. That's tied into our ELA high school teachers' goals, where their goals are all around working with multiple texts, which also ties into Mr. Wolf and the Newburyport High School School Improvement Plan. So we take that data from the MCAS, we tie it into teacher goals, curriculum, and instruction in the classroom. And hopefully next year I can come back and say, hey, 2 different excerpts, our kids did really well in that one. Similar process happened at the lower grades, elementary and the Knock Middle School. So this is something we're very excited for, and this is a way that we're going to merge all of this internal and external data to make it user-friendly for teachers and administrators so we can really look at student growth. So this is our Newburyport Analytics, and this is going to be a repository for all of our internal and external assessment data on students, students' progress, teachers, classes, etc. So with this, next year I'll be able to pull up a student. Let's say it's Gallagher Sean. I can look at his MCAS scores, and if he's a 12th grader, this is projecting in the future, I'll be able to look at his 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 10th grade MCAS scores. I'll be able to look at his DIBELS scores if I want. I'll be able to look at any internal data that we collect and put into this so we can really look at a student's growth. We're super excited for this, to have this in a place that's going to be user-friendly for teachers, because as we mentioned earlier, all this data is great, but what do we do with it? How do we actually use it? And from a teacher perspective, sometimes this data is in all different places. This is going to make it very useful for teachers to target students so we can have students achieve and grow.
I just have one question. Sean, is this the same system that we had a whole presentation once when we were in the middle school library? Is this it?
It's the same.
But it hadn't been really used, right?
Correct. Yeah.
That's the one that we all, I mean, I was there. Wasn't the whole school committee there that day?
The analytics.
Yeah.
So
okay.
this is, I take a step back and credit, obviously Lisa Marie Ippolito for adding these systems, these programs, and then really working with our faculty and developing the vertical team, district, and so part of that is Ms. Ippolito's kind of taken the analytics program and has really worked with the developer to make this accessible. So the goal for this is for our teachers, for the kids that are sitting in front of them, is to have really the ability to analyze the students' data right in front, like live data as Principal Rossi was talking about. So this has been a lot of work behind the scenes that Ms. Ippolito's been doing. When she's back, we could have her kind of do a presentation on that too. So, but this is a tool that we feel really brings data to the classroom teacher of the students that are in front of them. So we're excited about that. So you're going to have the standardized data, you're going to have the internal assessment data, you're going to have the program data, but what Mr. Wolf's working on is the common assessment data that eventually will be able to be rolled up in here also. So,
thanks.
And so as we start to think and plan for the future, as was mentioned a couple times, 2022 should be our new benchmark year. It's like going back to 2017-18 when the MCAS went from legacy to next gen. We have a whole new beginning. Student absenteeism is a challenge across the board for recovery efforts. It's a challenge across the state. I imagine it's a challenge across the country. Student growth district-wide is consistent and promising. I want to go back to Ms. Higgins' point earlier. I have the perspective of seeing the whole district student growth, and when we present in a couple weeks, I think some of that, a little more positive student growth might become a little more apparent and manifest itself. This is going to help us to really tie data into key budget decisions. Do we hire more interventionists? Do we make some curriculum decisions, get some technology? And of course, cycling back one more time to the students and the faces in front of us. How do we use this data to inform our instruction in the schools to help these students who are eating dinner in Montreal at their great Model UN journey? How do we help them grow and achieve? So when they graduate Newburyport schools, they've actually shown that they are the portrait of a graduate that we imagine. So that's it for the 42-slide presentation.
We counted 41.
Oh, 41, we cut it down. You're welcome. That was the last. That was the last slide about all my running achievements. I left that off. Too personal. So now questions, and I hope I can answer some. Mr. Gallagher, Ms. Rossi, Ms. Sokolowski, anyone else?
No.
Questions? Ms. Walker?
Yeah, my first is just a request because there was some new information in the slide that wasn't in our packet, and I know you were probably just updating. If we could just make sure we get an updated version, because I appreciated the way some of the information was represented. And then just a question that can be answered at your next presentation if you can't answer it tonight. I was looking at the internal assessments. It looks like primarily it's Dibbles and iReady. I recognize them, and I could see them also shown on the DESE site as approved, meeting the DESE guidelines. There was one that I didn't see on the DESE site, which was F&P, which nobody mentioned tonight. So I just, if we could just get some clarification on how that's being used in the schools. I think it was also referred to as BAS, F&P, BAS. See, this is the acronym thing.
Yeah.
I just would be interested to know if that has a unique application, and when you guys do pick assessments or pick screening assessments, what sorts of process you follow if it's not one that's approved by DESE or isn't listed on the DESE site. So again, I'm not meaning to put you on the spot tonight, so if you want to answer that the next session, that's totally fine
Yeah,
with me.
perfect, yep.
So thank you. I was very educated by that. I found it very useful. Appreciate it.
Made me feel like a teacher again. It felt good. A little bit.
Any other questions?
No, very comprehensive, very thoughtful, and it certainly gives us a nice overview of how we're combining the data, internal and external, and how it's informing decisions we're making, both on an individual student level and even on a larger level, groups and classes. So I appreciate this, and I look forward to the next ones.
Just a couple of reflections and then one question. One is, I thought the beginning of year data for grades 3 and 4 was particularly promising, especially in light of last year's MCAS data. And it looks as though, whether the third grade teachers are particularly strong, the fourth grade teachers are starting the year off well, like students are readjusting back to school. I'm not sure there's probably a variety of factors, but their beginning of year data was very strong with a lot of students even above grade level already at that point in the year. I would love to see the mid-year data, whether that's in like the January or February meeting, somewhere around there. And if it's possible, it would be great to see that data disaggregated by special education and EL status. That would be really appreciated. And then my last question was, what does attendance look like now to this point in the year? What percentage of students are chronically absent? Is it improving over last year when the COVID guidelines are not in place? Is it back to what it was pre-COVID? What does that look like?
And there was a piece that I actually mentioned. So we actually put in place kind of a system where we alert parents and families to a student who has 5 absences, so they can actually look at that and say, ooh, what's going on here? Are we okay? So that's one piece. I would only be able to speak anecdotally to attendance. I think I defer to some principals. I know anecdotally when I was talking to Mr. Tester and Mr. Wolf today, they said attendance is still a huge problem. But again, that's anecdotal from a conversation I had earlier.
Yeah, I think maybe for our next meeting, because we'll be, Mr. Wolf and Mr. Marcos will be here at our next presentation, so we can bring in some attendance data from last year to this year.
Any other?
Just a clarifying question. When you were talking about the data, was that the iReady data that you said that was very promising?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
the iReady.
Yeah.
I think it was 3rd and 4th, maybe
Yep.
it was 4th and 5th, but
Yep.
it was the upper grades that you presented, looked really promising.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Dr.
I do have one comment before I leave, so I have to say this because I always say this with data. I'm an English teacher, and there's a poet, Gerald Weisner. In the wild end, we remember dreams, never data. I would say it to my students, so I have to say it to everybody. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you in 2 weeks.
That's right.
Right, splitting that up was wise.
Yes.
It was.
Thank you.
Subcommittee updates. Mr. Callahan, Finance.
We have not met.
Ms. Walker, Policy. That's coming up as well?
Yeah, we meet next week. We have we have a lot that we could potentially discuss. I think we'll probably have a full plate with the transportation policy recommendations, which will inform the budget. So I know we also talked last time about curriculum, and I think we still have the superintendent evaluation policy to work on, and a few other items that we are getting information back from the attorney. My recommendation, and I haven't talked to this with the rest of the committee, is to focus primarily on the transportation policy for our next meeting, so that those of you who are interested in the curriculum discussion will hold that until maybe January or February even, because January we might be working on our, we might have our first meeting with our policy representative from the MASC. So am I correct that there's not a huge sense of urgency on the curriculum committee.
That's fun because we have Sissel in place.
We have something in place, so whatever we can do, it doesn't have to happen in January.
Thinking, well,
Okay.
unfortunately, Mayor's not here tonight, but I'm hopeful that he will appoint members in our organizational meetings so that we're ready to run with it to try
Okay.
and make that transition from our existing Sissel ad hoc to a curriculum subcommittee. So,
Okay.
yeah, I think we can make that transition when we're ready.
All right, great, thanks.
Thank you. Joint education, we're fresh off that meeting.
Yep, joint education met for the last time tonight. The city council has voted to reorganize their subcommittee structure, and they have gone from 9 committees down to 6. And essentially, the education process here in Newburyport is going to be sort of subdivided between 3 committees. We asked for kind of a better explanation, and essentially it goes like this. Originally, Joint Ed, as a committee of the City Council, had budget responsibilities. That was their job, was to work with us around budget issues. It evolved into something that I think was actually probably equally as useful, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But the statement about working on the budget has now been shifted to budget and finance. General government will deal with our buildings and capital, and city services, we're not really sure what it's going to deal with or how we fit in it. But that's, what we're losing, and we have tried to figure out strategies to recapture it, is that over the years, the Joint Ed Committee has been a place where we can really talk about things in a much more informal way, and provide some insight and information to City Council, which then gets disseminated. So we're trying to figure out how do we sort of not lose that. And a couple of the ideas that have come up is a joint facilitated retreat between the City Council and School Committee. We've talked about encouraging the mayor to add something to his weekly report or bi-weekly report. We've talked about actually considering a school committee subcommittee that invites city councilors to join us in some of the conversations. Again, while budget was supposed to be the main focus, there was a lot of other less tangible but very important information that was exchanged, and I'm anxious not to see that disappear, especially with all the stuff that's going on, post-COVID, all the other stuff that school committee is dealing with. So those conversations are going to be ongoing, and where policy will pick up the idea about setting up a committee, and we'll talk about what that would mean. So I think that's it. We're done. And as I mentioned earlier, it's Joint Ed is a committee that I have been on and off of, but mostly on for 22 years, and I was disappointed to see that the City Council didn't choose other options that were available, such as meeting 4 times a year to just keep that dialogue and face-to-face happening. That there's no mechanism now for that face-to-face to happen other than having individual meetings, which I think actually is not good for the schools, not good for the City Council, and not good for the city. But I wasn't the only one there, so Ms. Walker, I'm sure, has another perspective that you'd be happy to share.
No, I thought you did a good job summarizing. I don't have anything to add. One thought I do have, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, is we sort of seem to punt things to policy. I'm not trying to be.
Thinking that.
I just don't want to have too much power.
Member Menon, I'm joking.
I would be happy to.
But I was wondering if some of these topics, which are more about like overall organization, whether there might be an opportunity after the new year to have like a mini retreat that sort of talks about some of these organizational pieces or opportunities for different, sort of setting our course, but also, because to me this is like more than policy, right? It's about how we interact as a committee and interact with other, and I feel like one of the other ones that got, the curriculum one, I feel like merits maybe a
More
different type of discussion.
For the entire committee, I agree, yeah.
So maybe
at this
ponder.
point, we haven't scheduled or planned a winter retreat, but that's always a possibility.
Okay.
And then another possibility would be to just put these items on our regular business meeting agenda for everyone to discuss, because I thought some really productive ideas came out of that, our final joint education meeting. There was no one there who really supported the elimination of that committee, and that's, that was true of all three of the city councilors were genuinely disappointed that we weren't moving forward with that. So I think that we have some ideas and interest in continuing those, continuing to have some effective communication and connection between the two bodies. Yeah. Right.
Sounds good.
Did you guys clarify what I'm going to get the titles wrong. They had 3 different committee titles to replace.
Yes, yeah, I think I shared some of that, and I could be happy to share it again. Budget and finance will deal with financial stuff.
And that's really the main one.
That's the main one. General government will deal with our capital projects and our buildings needs. That's what general government apparently does. And city services is kind of very vague. It's,
What was it called? It was like citizen.
City services. It used to be, it was
It was different from what was in the email.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Now, and I'm sorry because I was out of the room, but so are those 3 new divisions on the council?
From the, no, they didn't form any new committees. They just folded 2 committees into other existing subcommittees.
Are they going to expect the superintendent to show up?
Well, that was, we addressed that.
That was, no.
Okay.
So
That's not the
that's a
intention.
really good question. I think that's something we should just make sure is reported and reiterated,
Yeah.
is that the counselors that were there that explained it did not indicate that there was an expectation that because it's getting folded into this other committee, the superintendent or anyone has the obligation to now attend these meetings. So I think honestly, it's about managing workload for the city council.
Yeah.
And education happened to be one of the sacrifices that was made, and legitimately so. They 9 committees is hard to manage, but I think we have to be diligent about protecting our staff and our time and making sure that when we're asked to report out at a budget and finance committee that we get plenty of notice and that there's an intention there, and it's not just this expectation just because we get invited we're going to go. I think there has to be, we're not a standing member of a committee anymore, so I think that means those expectations need to be managed.
And even then, the thing I was trying to find from earlier, the language in it says nothing about the superintendent attending any of those meetings.
Yep.
Yeah, when we talked about how we could better communicate, they talked about how we have presentations on capital stuff and they don't get those presentations. And things being what they are, I pointed out to them that I could count on one hand the number of city council members that have shown up outside of budget meetings at our school committee meetings in this last year. And I think it looks more like that. I think the response to that is make sure they know when Steve Bergholm is going to do a presentation so that they have the option to either watch it later or attend.
Right. Well, and that's very straightforward. I mean, we have a whole budget calendar and specific presentations. We just share that to the budget and finance chair, and they can go from there, right? I think that's how
Well,
we handle it.
I would recommend, because it's sort of amorphous, that I would say the council president probably should be the point of contact unless we're told otherwise. And then she can determine what committee to share it with or include it in the meeting packet.
Yeah, so we're just keeping them in the loop. Yeah. We all set?
Yep, I think I'm all set.
All right, superintendent's report?
All right. Just a few items here. I won't keep you all here too long. I wanted to give an update on Ian Larson, and as you all know, she's been working with the district for 2 years. Landmark consultant. Talking to Mr. Pierce and Deb O'Connor, I think in the future, maybe at our next meeting, the meeting after that, we could talk about some of the work that's been going on around the district, especially with the program development, language-based programming that we've developed with Deb O'Connor, along with Ian Larson and also Mr. Pierce, and then our skills-based instruction program. Really differentiating the reading disability, which is more of our language-based, and then our global learning disabilities are now the skills-based. So really working with that. Ms. Larson's also been really looking at IEPs, looking at Tier 1, Tier 2 interventions. Has been working with the general ed teachers throughout the district on the Tier 1. So a lot of wonderful work is going on with that. In our program development, number one, which we're excited about, but number two, utilizing her expertise with the entire faculty has been really beneficial. So that's very positive, and I think down the road we'll have a presentation from Mr. Pierce and Ms. O'Connor. The other piece that we're working on is our phone systems. You know, as part of the upgrades, the 911 system, especially at the high school, the phone system is just totally out of date. And so Ms. Furlong and her tech team been working with developing a plan and for us upgrading those, along with Mr. Littlehale. He's got experience with phone systems in his previous district, so we're hoping to be upgrading those and have those systems up in place by the end of the school year. So there's been a lot of work going towards that. And then the last piece, and Mr. Marcos will be here next week, but we're running the second round of the student-led conversations for the middle school, which has just been so well received. Parent participation and parent and guardian participation is over 80% in these student-led conferences. Students, pretty much in general, they'll choose 2 pieces of work that they're very proud of, and they're actually presenting this to their parents with the teacher in the room. And then they talk about goals moving forward. And what's really nice, it's a constructive dialogue that the student runs, and then it gives the student an opportunity on how the parents and the guardians can support you know, the goals of the student. So student can say, I need you to help me with this. And then also it gives the opportunity for the student to also encourage the teacher on what they could do to help them achieve the goals. So this has been something that we're really proud of. At the end of the year, there's going to be a showcase in June 1st, I believe, that with all of the student-led conversations where the students will be able to present all their work throughout the year. So we're really excited about that. And kudos to the administration and the teachers at the NOC for really advancing and enhancing this. So it's great. That's it. Those are my 3 little updates for you.
All right. If any new business?
I just had a question. Can you remind me what the next step in the budget process is? Specifically where I'm interested in when we can sort of think about fees and have that conversation.
Yeah, so we're right now, we're meeting with the individual budget holders, putting together the preliminary budget, so that's all of the requests. When we come back for the new year, at our first school committee, I kind of will give like an overview of kind of where we're at. And then the following meetings, I think the meeting in February is when the principals come in with their school council and kind of go over that. So I think fees throughout that process will be part of that. So I would say January and February as we're developing the overall budget.
Okay, and just what would be useful for that conversation is just to know like we've talked in the past, what the fees, how they're determined and what they're intended to be used to fund for each program. So outside of the transportation fees, you know, the athletic fees and the participation fees for different curriculum. So if we have like a summary sheet or something at some point, that would be helpful for that.
And I think that's part of Mr. Littlehale's budget process, to have that available for school committee.
Okay, super. Appreciate that.
Yes.
John, do you have any idea how Choice is looking for next year? Like openings?
Not yet, but.
Any kind of guess at all?
Yeah.
Is it normally ninth grade the biggest amount? Because some
Usually
consider private
ninth
schools
grade,
or whatever.
yes, yeah. 8th grade, it all depends on the class. It all depends on what the 8th grade class, how big they are, and once we have information on students that may be leaving the district, that's where we should develop the seats.
When do we normally find that? I always forget.
School choice, we usually, I think we talk about that in February.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm. So we've typically at the high school, in my 5 years, has been from 10 to 20 students, depending on the year. And depending on the class.
Great. Anything else?
Wouldn't happen to be looking for a motion to adjourn, would you?
Go for it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.